Hi, this is Lynn here. I just wanted to step in here and warn that today's chat with investigative reporter and author Louise Milligan covers some confronting topics, including sexual assault, gendered violence, and suicide. If these topics are a trigger for you, you might like to skip this episode or come back another time. Thanks.
Hello, and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. I just want to give a shout out to Rounded, our sponsor, because I know for me, my quarterly BAS used to be so stressful. But I love Rounded because everything is there and so tidy, Rach.
I know, no more shoe boxes of receipts. I also really love that my accountant can log into the program remotely and help me with lodgement. Just do it without me needing to even worry about it.
That's what we love.
But best of all, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can save 20% on any annual Rounded plan. Even if you've got the Rounded discount last year, you can get it this year as well.
Awesome. The show notes always have the details.
Yeah. I'm really excited about our guest today, and I know many of our listeners have been waiting for it too. It's Louise Milligan, and she really needs no introduction, does she?
No, not really, but do it anyway.
Well, we know she's one of Australia's most well-known investigative journalists, as well as being the author of 2 award-winning non-fiction books, plus her debut novel, Pheasants Nest. And I stayed up till 2 a.m. with that one. I don't know about you, Lynn.
Well, yes, I finished it late last night because, there's nothing like a deadline. And it'll be fascinating to hear about her inspiration process behind this story, because I know she's probably come across a lot of material through her day job. So do you want to read out a bio for Louise before we get her into the hot seat?
Yes. Louise Milligan is a multi-award-winning investigative journalist for ABC TV's Four Corners, the Australian National Broadcaster's flagship current affairs documentary program. She's also the author of 2 best-selling non-fiction books, Cardinal, The Rise and Fall of George Pell, and Witness, an investigation into the brutal cost of seeking justice. Her books have been awarded multiple prizes, including the Walkley Book Award, the Davitt Awards Best Non-Fiction Crime Book, the Melbourne Prize for Literature People's Choice Award, the Victorian Premier's Literary Awards People's Choice Prize. That's a mouthful. The Sir Owen Dixon Chambers Law Reporter of the Year Award, a Press Freedom Medal, and a shortlisting for the Stella Prize. Wow. Louise's journalism, particularly her coverage of historical institutional child abuse and the experience of women in the criminal justice system and Parliament, has broken national and international news, sparked government inquiries, and led to profound cultural change and law reform. She started her career in newspapers and is a former High Court correspondent and political reporter. Born in Ireland to an Irish mother and Scottish father, Louise moved to Australia as a child and now lives in Melbourne with her husband and 2 children. And Pheasants Nest is her first novel. Welcome, Louise. We are so excited to have you, and what an impressive resume.
Thanks so much. I have to say I was having a little giggle because I can't say the word investigative either.
Very hard.
It's a real problem because it's my actual job and I can't say the word. So I'm glad that someone else shares this problem. But thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted.
I gave it a red hot go.
Yeah, no, like 10 points.
Congratulations on the novel. I know you've written a lot before, but this is your first novel, isn't it?
Yes.
We've got to be careful not to give out any spoilers, but it's about a woman who goes missing and that ripple effect with her boyfriend, her friendships, and the police. And how did it feel having it finally out into the world?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it felt like winning Tats Lotto. Like I have wanted to write a novel since I was a little girl, like way before I ever thought about journalism. And, my mum, who I actually dedicated the book to, always told me that I would write a novel. So, yeah, it was really exciting. I know it's a bit of a journalistic cliche in a way, like
we've all got a novel in the bottom drawer.
They've all got one. Yeah, I feel so excited. And I mean, one of the best parts about it is, you know, you sort of like push this little ship out to sea and you don't know how it's going to be received. I mean, first of all, that Jane Portram and Alan and Unwin loved it and, you know, from the get-go and really wanted, you know, to support it. But then that it's getting such great feedback from readers and reviews and so on. It's quite surreal because it you know, I've sort of said to other people that you feel like you're putting your heart on a plate, you know,
Yeah.
when you write a novel. It's a completely different experience to writing nonfiction. Nonfiction is, you know, rewarding and in my case, both of those books were absolute passion projects, but they were both very difficult. And the first one was certainly very, you know, legally risky and all of that. So that, you know, it was a great thing to do, but this is just much more pleasurable.
Sort of pleasurable. I mean, it is a book that documents something that many of us fear as women.
Yes.
Was that part of it challenging, like putting yourself into the shoes of Kate, your main character, and what she went through?
It wasn't a challenge in the sense that through my work, I have spoken to hundreds of survivors of sexual crimes and also to family members of people who haven't made it. Most importantly, I guess, for this book, the original inspiration was Jill Maher, who was the Irish woman who was working with the ABC. We never worked together. I started just after she died, but I was the first journalist to interview her husband, Tom, who is just the loveliest man, and who, like the character Liam in the book, who's the boyfriend of Kate Delaney, the protagonist, there was initial suspicion around Tom, which is just, you know, horrendous. But I guess that those many, many years of working with these people means that, you know, these stories are almost second nature to me in a way. And I, in my journalistic practice, like to be very, I suppose, empathetic and to really feel the story and, you know, not that old school kind of, I suppose, masculinist idea of journalism where you're very much emotionally removed from the subject. I can't be like that.
Yeah.
But I guess that sort of helped with the creation of the character and also the believability of the experience.
Yeah, it certainly had a Liam, particularly the boyfriend of Kate, certainly had a believable character arc, I felt. I also felt quite strongly that you captured the police quite well because, I thought they were quite accurate and quite real people. They weren't sort of that troubled, hard drinking, sort of pseudo fictional cop that we see so often. They were a bit more nuanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes from my many years of also working with police. I did a lot of stories of police with post-traumatic stress disorder who had been pretty terribly treated by the force and then by the insurance company, you know, not believed. And so Peter D'Ambrosio, who is the main investigating detective in the book, is based on one in particular, but also elements of some of the others. But I also, the idea of Pheasants Nest originally came from a coronial inquest that I covered many years ago when I was a young court reporter at the Australian newspaper, and I was covering this inquest into this young man who had jumped from the Pheasants Nest bridge.
Yeah.
And I discovered that this was a place where a lot of people went to end their lives, and that it had had this enormous toll on the local police. And I interviewed some of those police, but back then we didn't really talk about suicide so much in journalism. And so the story was spiked only for that reason.
Yeah.
It had always stayed with me, and I thought that would be an interesting perspective to bring to the book. And then the other police officer is someone who has witnessed a lot of domestic violence or mopping up the aftermath of domestic violence. And without giving away spoilers, that leads to him making, you know, bad decisions in his policing.
Yeah.
But again, I wanted him to be a character that, you know, you could empathize with why he was making these decisions.
Yeah, they were great characters.
So I guess as we record this episode, we've sort of seen figures like 27 Australian women being killed this year alone, and there's a lot of talk about it. We've seen mass protests around the country about rallying against gender-based violence. Did that make you feel this was the book you always want to write? Is there a connection there?
I suppose, I mean, I have documented a lot of gender-based violence in my journalism. I think it's just, I suppose it's sort of a coincidence in a way that it was launched at the same time that we had this string of terrible homicides, high profile, like Bondi Junction, for instance. And I did write about Bondi Junction for the Saturday paper because I felt like it just, like every other woman, I think, in the country who'd pushed a pram, pushed a baby around a shopping centre in a pram. It just got me in the solar plexus. But also, one of the things that I really wanted to achieve with this novel was to write it from the point of view of a survivor. And I choose the word survivor instead of victim, but to hear her story. So instead of being this sort of body that everyone else is talking about, but she's not being heard, it's her story.
Yeah.
And I very deliberately didn't give the perpetrator a name. So he's just referred to as the guy throughout the novel. And the guy doesn't get to have a name. And that, again, was inspired by Jill Maher's mum, Edith, who used to be so upset when she would see pictures of her daughter's killer on the front of the newspaper and his name. And she was like, I don't want to see him. I don't want to see his name. She wanted to see her daughter, her beautiful, funny, smart daughter, whose life had been snuffed out because of this vile person. And so, I was sort of reclaiming that in a way, like on behalf of Jill and Edith and Tom, but so many people who, I had covered these sort of cases for years when I was a court reporter and seen, like in the book, I talk about, there's a Victorian ad that used to be on the telly, Dumb Ways to Die.
Oh, yes.
It was Dumb Ways to Die. It was about people dying because of accidents on rail platforms.
Yeah, I remember it, yes.
Yeah.
But what I experienced as a young court reporter was people dying for dumb reasons because some guy decided to take away their life. And, Kate Delaney sort of says in the book, so many dumb ways to die, so many dumb guys.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't want him to be a criminal mastermind. And I was actually talking to Jock Sarong, who you'd know is another novelist in Australia and is a former lawyer who did, these criminal cases on the weekend at Sorrento Writers Festival. And he was saying, he never saw one criminal mastermind in all of his years. That's not the way that it works. It's like people lose their lives or are sexually assaulted, or have terrible things happen to them that will change their lives forever because someone made a dumb decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about how you very much want to portray Kate as a survivor and not a victim, because that really comes across. I mean, how did you want readers to really experience that character?
Well, I wanted her to be someone who, you can imagine being your friend.
Yeah.
Who is strong and
she's tough.
funny. She's tough.
Yeah.
She's got that, gallows humor that gets her by because she's covered these sorts of cases herself. She has an insight into what it's like to be involved in these crimes because she's been covering them. She knows how the media is going to cover it. She's rolling her eyes all the time. She's rolling her eyes at her perpetrator. She thinks he's an absolute idiot. And a moron.
He is.
And, a lot of people have really liked this. I've noticed there are some people who are like, oh, I don't think she was afraid enough. But I was really channeling how I, as a journalist, would be in that situation. That's how I would be. It's people aren't unreconstructed victims. People are still themselves.
Yeah.
And that's who she is. And, like one of the early reviewers said of her and the other characters, that they were the sort of people that you wanted for your friends, and that you really wanted the best for them. And when that she finished the book, she didn't want to sort of put it down. She didn't want to leave them. And I
Yeah.
love that feeling myself as a
Yeah.
reader. And I just felt so gratified that had come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me as well, the way that the book expands on, how we normally consume a crime story. We're given the facts and then that not a lot of context. It might, kind of eke out over the coming weeks. But did you find freedom in that, like taking a story and being able to dip into all the nuances of it and, to go deeper, I suppose?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I didn't write it as, oh, this is a crime fiction book. I just wrote it as a book that would be the sort of book that I, having done the work that I've done, would write. It just happens to have a crime at the center of it. But also, I, as a person who, as I say, has an empathetic practice of journalism, of course I'm going to go into the characters and their motivations and their complexities and their nuances. And also, as an Irish Australian, our culture, we are storytellers, and this is what we do. And so I'm not sure that it was a self-conscious thing, but it's just what I would do. That's what I've grown up with, storytelling.
Yeah. Well, I love the portrayal of Kate, because I do think that's something that's often missing in these sort of books, like a complex character-driven sort of, I guess, victim survivor. And I think that's a really powerful part of the story, which I think that all your work with victims of violent crimes and things, that's where it shows through. Is that what informed it for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Apart from the fact that I wanted it to be coming from the point of view of a survivor, there was also a part of me that felt so sad about all the women and men whose stories I have covered who didn't get to tell their story because either they died, they were killed by their perpetrator, or they took their own life.
Yeah.
Or they drank themselves to death, or they died too early, prematurely, because that is what so often happens with particularly victims of child trauma who are, I had spent many years speaking to them. And, some of the people whose stories I have told, since died. So that was definitely running through my motivations for writing this character in this way.
Yeah.
We talked a bit off air about your job, quite full on. You're full-time for Four Corners. So how do you juggle writing books with your reporting work? Like, is it a juggle, or are you fitting it in between the gaps as so many authors do?
Fitting it in between the gaps with this book. With my previous books, I did take time off to write them. This one, it was really actually a form of therapy in lots of ways, because I had got to a point where things had got quite dark and I needed to do something. And it's kind of like, what do I do? Like, I'm not going to garden. Do you know what I mean?
Start crocheting.
No, I don't have the fine motor skills for that. I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I go to a lot of day spas, but there are only so many Chinese massages that you can have. But I wanted to do something, I suppose, creative with that experience.
Yeah.
So I just had a rule that I would write, like one paragraph a night, and you'd always end up writing more than that. But the way that I really got started was when I had COVID. So I'd written 3 chapters in 2015 and then put it away for a few years because life just got in the way.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I could write books then. That was before I wrote Cardinal or Witness. And I just sort of wrote those 3 chapters, and then, it was literally like, I think it was about 7 years that I put it away for. and then came back to it when I was feeling really blue. And I got COVID, and it was this weirdly creatively inspiring COVID where
Lucky you.
I know.
Yeah, normally it's like all about brain fog.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. It was just like it was all the neurons were firing, and I was having fever dreams and stuff like that, and I basically also had an excuse just to not do anything else for a week. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't waste time. I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I wrote 6 chapters in a week.
Wow.
And that was it. And then I was really, really invested.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of stopped watching Netflix. You know what I mean? I just stopped watching TV. And then on weekends I would do bits and pieces. And as I say, I'd be on a Four Corners shoot where, you know, I'd be staying in some motel in, you know, the middle of nowhere or whatever, and there wasn't really anything else to do. And so I just wrote.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's a great creative outlet, I guess. And if you're seeing trauma all the time, do you feel it was a bit cathartic to write about this in a different way?
Oh, completely. I mean, look, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, like from secondary trauma. So that's precisely what it was. And I remember that there was someone who was working with me around about that time in relation to that, who said to me, every time you talk about your novel, your whole face lights up, your whole demeanor changes, and you just look so happy. And, you know, some people were saying to me, oh, well, you know, maybe this is what you should do full time. Like maybe this is your thing. But I do love my job and I get a lot out of it. And so many yarns, as the journos say, like all the stories were there, but not just the stories as in the stories that went to air or the stories that were printed in the newspaper, the stories behind the stories.
Yeah.
The stories, you know, that
often don't get told, I suppose.
Well, they never
They get
told.
spiked.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the initial premise for this is based around a story that was spiked.
Yeah.
But also the conversations in the newsrooms, you know, the ridiculous motivations of, you know, some of the people that you sort of run into.
Yeah, it's interesting. As we mentioned in your bio, you've covered a lot of investigations with like that involved, you know, huge change, law reform, and you've seen what women experience in the criminal justice system. Have you got some stories you share? Did that inform the novel?
I mean, not just women, because I saw a lot of men who were victims of child trauma and what they experienced as well. I mean, that was the whole subject of my second book, Witness, and I had been a witness in a criminal proceeding. Look, there were elements. I mean, for instance, my observations of police stations, and that was based on my own experience, actually, not so much of the criminal justice system, but of I have been subjected to death threats on multiple occasions, and a couple of the people have been convicted, and I have spent time in police stations, you know, sitting around waiting, and so some of those observations were things that I had actually seen, you know, when I was a complainant myself. So I have been not just, I suppose, a journalist covering these things. I have been a witness and I have been a victim survivor. So that definitely informs the book.
Gosh, with that in mind, I mean, where do you draw strength from when you are reporting on harrowing stories and perhaps experiencing, you know, threats to your own safety or dealing with trolls on social media? I mean, can you even compartmentalize that stuff?
Unfortunately, you get a little bit used to it. You get a bit sort of battle hardened. But also the thing I draw strength from is the absolutely incredible, brave people that I get to meet.
Yeah.
And the change that we affect through the work. You know, I mean, the last story that I did about Cranbrook in Sydney led to 2 inquiries. It led to the headmaster resigning. It led to a teacher who was engaging in predatory behaviour, he will never teach again in New South Wales. You get to sort of, make cultural changes.
Make a difference.
Make a difference. Yeah. I mean, it sort of sounds a bit corny in a way, but you shine the light in the dark place. But I am so inspired by the bravery of the people that I speak to, not just the people who are victim survivors, but also the people who see something bad happening and stand up and make themselves heard in circumstances that are potentially risky for them. So the people who support the victim survivors, I'm just endlessly impressed by those people. I feel enormously privileged to be trusted, to tell those stories.
Gosh, I write about cushions and nice interiors, so I'm feeling very intimidated now. So
don't feel intimidated. Lynn, I often say that, like people sort of say to me, don't you want to do something positive for a while? I'm like, yeah, next week on Four Corners, puppies. Why are they so cute? Rainbows. Why are they so pretty?
Yeah. Oh, honestly. You must deal with a lot of sources and everything as you're talking about. How do you deal with those sources? How do you get them to trust you? How do you protect them? That must be a big part of it.
By being kind and listening and being trauma informed in the approach, not unnecessarily subjecting them to a retelling and retelling and retelling and retelling of the trauma. So understanding those things.
Yeah, it's important.
And it's not something that you sort of read in a book. It's just something that you come to learn. And, also letting them know that if ultimately this is going to be too hard for you, I will protect you to the grave, I will do whatever it takes to keep your confidence, and I will never do the wrong thing by you. But the other really important thing is being forensic. So just because you treat everyone, whoever they are, with decency and respect, doesn't mean that you don't subject it to, behind the scenes, I suppose, a cold lens in a way, and making sure that you can stack up absolutely everything that you publish.
Yeah.
And we have really, really robust processes at Four Corners that I haven't seen anything anywhere near as robust in any of the other places that I've worked, which is not to say that there aren't processes in those other places, but not quite as robust. And so, because sometimes there's this idea of, oh, well, you're just like believing everyone, and, but it's like, well, no, just because you're kind to someone doesn't mean that you don't make sure that you can stack up every single thing that they say. And if you can't, well, it doesn't get published.
What mistakes do you think we make as writers when telling stories? I mean, it's a skill that we have as journalists, but, we all make mistakes. We're human. What do you think that we can do better?
As journalists or as writers, like of novels?
I think more as journalists, yeah.
Well, one thing that I've been talking about a bit lately is I think that there has been this like very unfortunate polarization of discourse in which, it's that sort of Trumpian thing where everyone's sort of lining up on either side of a debate and shouting at each other and not meeting in the middle and not finding the complexity and nuance. And I think that that's a real problem. And I've certainly been subjected to it myself by the kind of, Sky After Dark crew, by The Australian, about which I made press counsel complaint, my old employer. So yeah, that is something that I'm quite passionate about. I think when I started out as a journalist 24 years ago, I think everyone was much more in the middle on either side, and I think it's an unfortunate byproduct of social media, for instance. So yeah, I would just like people to try and empathize a bit more with people who don't agree with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, with Four Corners, you take time to write, to present programs, to do your research. But the challenges with things like social media, everyone is probably less trained than you are, and also maybe more keen to jump onto the bandwagon, particularly with social media. You have millions of reporters, in inverted commas, out there and making judgments. Is that hard to balance?
I think there's a rise of this kind of what I reckon culture, I call it, like, here's what I reckon about this, and that has bled into journalism as well, like where it's, and I don't think that that's our role. I mean, I do think that we can, like we can write analysis pieces and kind of shed light on issues, but what we should be doing more than anything else is listening, like it's listening to people's stories and also researching and just reading all the primary source material and all of that instead of jumping to conclusions. I think that's really folly, and we saw it really profoundly after the Bondi Junction attacks when a young man was falsely accused of being the perpetrator, not just on social media, but also on Channel 7. Because people, it's this idea where people are sort of wanting to be first with the information. I don't really think being first
instead of right.
Right is the important thing, not first. But it's difficult because there are lots of, just looking at in a journalistic context, there are lots of young people in particular who are under enormous pressure, very sort of quick turnaround, deadlines. I'm sure a lot of them would think, well, it's all very well and good for you, Milligan, you get all this time and you get 45 minutes and, it's much easier. But I do think it's for the people in positions of power in those organizations to really mentor the young people and give them a bit more time and, really make it clear that you can't just jump out and make an accusation against a person that is brutally defamatory for a start.
There's definitely not a lot of listening going on in social media, is there?
No, it's tiresome.
You have this incredible career. Does anything, looking back on it, surprise you about it? Or do you feel like you're doing what you set out to do? I mean, what surprises you about your career?
I don't know. I certainly, I mean, I remember about 15 years ago, I was on a weekend away with a friend who, and a very, I won't name the person, but a person who's a very high profile radio presenter now was there. And he said to me, "So Lou, what's your 10-year plan?" And at this point, I was state political reporter for Channel 7 in Sydney. And I was just like, I don't even have a 2-year plan. I don't know. Like, I haven't set out to do certain things. But I will say, working for Four Corners, writing 2 best-selling nonfiction books, writing a novel that has been so well received, it's like Mount Everest as far as, what I could have ever thought I would end up doing. I feel like the luckiest girl alive. My goodness. I watched Four Corners as a young person, and it was the pinnacle. So to be able to sort of to do that now is just such a gift. And, I often say, I'm Errol dieted into the place. They're going to have to blast me out. But also, as again, to write a novel, my goodness, and to have people actually like it. And you know what it's like. There are lots of people who are out there writing novels that it's very hard to get noticed if you don't have a platform. And I am very aware of my privilege in that way, that, it was easier for me to get noticed. But then I was talking to someone the other day who is one of those kind of first time writers, and I sort of listened to myself, and then I was sort of like, well, hang on a second, how much broken glass did I walk over to get to this point? I really, really worked for it, And I've had a lot of very, very intense things happen as a result of it.
Yeah.
I've been cross-examined for a full day by, like, you know, a really scary barrister in a huge criminal trial that was pretty much the criminal trial of the century. I've been sued by the Attorney General. As I said before, I've had like multiple death threats. But then I've had all the good things as well. So, you know, like, I think I've worked for it. So it's something that I want to keep doing. And I am working on another book, another novel now. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I'm super excited about it. And it's going to have a lot more of my Irish heritage in it. So I've been to Ireland a couple of times in the past year, and I'll be definitely going again in the near future. So
Oh, that's
It's
interesting.
interesting because a lot of authors, once they get on that wagon and they get a book that's been really well received, like Pheasants Nest, you know, they want to edge more into that.
Mm.
But it's clear that you're really keen on still being at Four Corners and just trying to fit everything in, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, for now, like, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, as I say, you just get so much inspiration. I mean, not that I'm writing literally about the things that have happened, but you do get so much inspiration from it. And
It'd kind of like be leaving your ideas garden.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a social person. I like other people, and I think I would find it hard just to be, you know, locked away in a room writing and then, you know, popping up for air and doing this sort of thing in writers' festivals every now and then.
Yeah.
I think I would need more than that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll see. Like, maybe I'll just get to the point where I'm just so exhausted and it's like
You have to make choices. Yeah.
You want to be in a room, in a garage, just with
Yeah.
your laptop and your books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do often ask our regular guests about their tech tips, which is sort of like a practical idea of tools or software that you use. Is there something that you use to plan your books or even in your day job as an investigative journalist?
I'm a bit of a Luddite, I would say. I mean, the only thing I do is with my novel, when something happens or someone's talking to me that has a sort of a good story, I'll just tape them just to get the language right and that sort of thing. So I often have like little tapes, and I'm constantly taking notes on my iPhone of ideas and of conversations and, you know, things like that. So I just have this like long list of bits and pieces, notes on the iPhone, because I've always got my phone with me. So and I suppose I send things off for transcribing just because if they're longer conversations, just because I do like transcribing things myself because I think it sort of sticks in your brain a bit more.
Yeah.
But from a time perspective, it just gets a bit much. But yeah, that's really the only thing. I don't have any. I've learned because I'm not from this world, this crime fiction world, but I've learned that it is a thing. Like, you know, that all these people are talking about methods and so on. And I've learned in the past few weeks, just from being on my book tour, that there's such a thing as a plotter and a pantser. And I am a pantser. It may shock you to learn, but funnily enough, I thought that it was a panther.
Oh, not a pantser.
What's a pantser? Is that someone who just kind of like writes the book in one go rather
Fly
than
by
plotting?
the seat of the
Fly
pants.
by the seat
Yeah,
of the
of course.
pants. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I am. Like, someone said early on that it was like this beautifully structured novel, which just made me laugh because I had the characters living in my head. They were my imaginary friends, and it was like they were kind of telling me what happens next. So I wasn't, I mean, I did go back and sort of change things around a little bit, and obviously redrafted certain bits and whatever, but it wasn't like I had this like overarching idea or structure. I didn't storyboard things,
Wow. So you just had one Word document, not separate into chapters or anything in
No,
separate
God, no.
separate Word documents. It was just one big thing.
Yeah, just one big thing.
Yeah.
I did for my nonfiction. So with Cardinal, for instance, there was and actually with Witness as well. So with Cardinal, I had the Royal Commission transcript and Pell's sort of evidence, and I sort of like plotted that all out and then sort of worked out what were the bits I was going to use. And with witness, you know, I was cross-examined for, as I say, a full day by Robert Richter, and there was just this long chain. I remember I sent to Louise Adler, my publisher at the time, my sort of summary of the cross-examination by Richter, and she was just like, "Oh my God, this is so stressful." But so I plotted it out that way. But I think nonfiction books, you know, you have to be so much more careful about how you do things. With this, as I say, I wasn't writing it thinking, oh, I'm going to have some sort of, you know, book that's going to be, you know, a bestseller, or it's, you know, it's going to be crime fiction, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. It was just me writing about stuff that I know and feeling so filled with joy by doing it. And one thing that I do want to say, and I'm sure you would have seen as you're reading it, although there is a dark premise at the center of Pheasants Nest, and although there are sad things that happen throughout it, there is so much lightness in it. So the love story, you know, between Liam and Kate, for instance, that was sort of based on, like, I've always been someone who loves hard. And I think it comes from being, like Katie is, a migrant who sort of came to Australia as a young child and felt like an outsider on the kind of playground. And so then when you meet your person, it's that feeling of like no one else understands. And so Kate and Liam are kind of like that. And I really enjoyed writing that part of it. And also her best friend, Sylvia.
Yeah, she's a great character.
Yeah, she's just this like really endearing, funny fashion journalist who adores Kate and Kate adores her. And she's based on partially on my best friend who was in fashion, but also just on a lot of funny girlfriends that I had in journalism, you know. I didn't want the book to be a punish, is what I guess I'm saying. I'm time poor. All my friends are pretty much time poor. I wanted it to be a book that people like me could sort of race through and not feel like they were, you know, like the literary equivalent of eating, you know, their fiber. You know what I mean? You know, when you're doing that, it's like, oh my God, I know this is potentially good for me, but I can't.
Well, we certainly loved it, and we're very excited to hear that you have another book coming up. Do you want to tell us what it's about, or is it too early days for that?
I feel like it's too early days, but as I say, it is going to be largely set in Ireland. And as you know, in Pheasants Nest, there is an Irish element, as Kate is an Irish migrant, and it sort of goes back to her childhood a little bit. So it's definitely going to have a lot of Ireland in it. And I mean, as I said to you, the Irish people are such great storytellers. There are so, I mean, honestly, the last time I was there, I was there with my family, and then I spent a couple of weeks just tootling around, just soaking everything up and listening to people and taking notes. And it's so rich, that culture, but it's also really rich. And this is something that I want to kind of convey in the book. There's a really interesting tension when you are a migrant, particularly from there. Like every time I go back there, I have to walk around and kind of just like, inject it into my veins, you know, like I just love, these are my people. This is my place. But then I open my mouth and I'm an outsider, you know? And
interesting.
And I mean, that's something everyone from like James Joyce has talked about, but that's something that I really want to incorporate into my next novel. But again, I also want it to have, you know, elements of sadness and, you know, bringing that empathy, bringing that journalistic experience, but also love and hope and redemption. I remember last year when I was going through that difficult time, and I went to see Florence and the Machine at Wome Adelaide. And I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a song she has called Shake It Out. And it's she was on the stage and she was just this, in this diaphanous frock, and she was just this beautiful, ethereal sort of creature. But she's singing, there's always darkness before the dawn. And I don't know, that's kind of like what Pheasants Nest is for me as a person, but also as a book. And that's what I want my next book to be as well.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Gosh,
Wow.
such
We
a
could
great
talk to you all
chat.
day.
We could.
I do often say that I could talk under cement.
Yeah.
Well, we're just as bad with that.
We are. We're terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the joys of being journalists. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so lovely to chat with you.
Was.
So tell us a little bit about where people can get your book. I guess it's out now and it's in all the bookstores and
all the good bookstores. Yeah.
And where can people connect with you if they want to follow you or?
Okay, I'm on most of the only one I'm not on is TikTok. I haven't quite worked that out yet, but I'm at Milligan Reports on Instagram and X, as it's now called, Twitter.
Yep.
And I have a Facebook page, and I also have a LinkedIn.
Wow.
As an investigative journalist, I do find, as much as people go on about social media, I also get a lot from it, story tips and everything, but also as a writer, it's a really lovely way of connecting with readers. And it's been so nice hearing from hundreds of people around the country about their experience of, Pheasants Nest. So jump on it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Louise. It's just been a fabulous chat. Good luck with the book and good luck with writing the next book. That brings us to the end of the show this week. But thanks to everyone who's listening and sharing us on social media. And we'll pop all the details in the show notes about where you can follow Louise and
buy the book.
Yeah, and grab her book. Grab her book. It's fantastic.
It is.
Thanks so much, guys, for having me. I really, really appreciate the support. And it's just so lovely to talk to you both. And I could talk to you all day.
Thank you.
But I actually have to go and do my job.
So do we.
Yes.
All righty, everybody. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.